Hey, gang. Well, this is new! So I think we all know by now that I enjoy Walt Disney Animation Studios. Most of my channel so far has been revolved around their movies. I do this because, well, Disney movies are normally pretty light, simple, and easy to talk about. Plus, these videos normally get clicks. But I'm kinda burnt out on talking about these movies and this company. But I figured I may as well go out in a bang and drop one more big special video for y'all. So today, we will be ranking every Disney ride movie. Now to clarify, I mean I will be ranking every movie that's based on an attraction at one of the existing Disney parks. I will not be discussing any on-ride movies, pre-shows, or experiences. That would be way too much effort and frankly, kinda boring. Before we get started, I will say that though I have actually ridden and experienced most of the attractions these movies are based on, the attractions themselves will not factor into my ranking. I won't dock a movie points because they change an aspect of the attraction. I'm judging these movies solely on their merits as feature films. References from the ride in the movie is a nice touch, but won't drastically affect how I feel about each film. With that all out of the way, let's see which one of these IP circle jerk movies is the worst. Also spoilers for all the movies if you couldn't tell. Moving on. Tomorrowland is the most boring movie I've ever watched for this channel.
Hey, what about me?
Okay, second most boring. And I was kinda into the first half hour when I was building up to getting to Tomorrowland, but that's all this movie is. Build up with practically no payoff. The main girl was your standard 2010s badass teenage girl that Disney and hell Hollywood was obsessed with at the time. She's rebellious but for a good cause and blah blah blah. I remember when I saw the trailer for this movie as a kid, it shows her getting out of jail, and I was kind of intrigued by the idea of our protagonist being a kind of bad guy ex-criminal. But of course, she's arrested for doing the wrong thing for the right reason, and the film barely acknowledges this afterwards. Whatever, it's not important. What is important is that this movie fucking blows. Nothing feels important because the stakes are, the girl needs to go to Tomorrowland because it looks cool. And so much the damn movie is, what's going on? What is this place? Our main character asks so many fucking questions, and the characters she's asking are getting annoyed by this, to the point that the robot girl literally turns herself off instead of answering them. But if these constant questions are so annoying, then why not answer them? The same goes for the George Clooney character. Just answer her fucking questions! It is legitimately painful to watch because the movie thinks that asking constant questions and getting vague, nothing burger answers is the same as building mystery or suspense. But no, it's not, because building suspense requires nuanced writing and engaging characters. But there is none of that! Every character is one note and borderline repeats the same 3 lines with different wording for the whole damn movie. Fuck! About halfway through the movie, we find out the stakes for the movie are the fate of the future is at stake, and the movie still manages to be boring? The worst part is, this beautiful sci-fi world of Tomorrowland that they were building up to for most of the film barely appears at the end. The movie gave us a bait and switch. We went from expecting a cool, colorful future to getting gray bleakness and Hugh Laurie as the bad guy. Which could have worked if the writing wasn't fucking shit! God, this movie just grinds my gears in the most frustrating way. The worst part though, this movie gives us a watered down message about banding together to take care of our world and make a better future. Ironic this came out before the first Trump presidency, but I digress. I feel like this could have been a really awesome and important movie if the script fleshed out these themes more and made it more about the environmentalism and showed the cons of a bad future and the benefits of a good future. But no, instead the movie's too concerned with boring SN melodrama and fun robot action. I fucking loathe this movie for baiting me with a cool trailer, hinting at good themes, and giving me George Clooney. But instead, it falls flat and fails in almost every way. The only things of quality here are some cool effects, decent performances, some interesting concepts, and the occasionally cute, cheeky reference to real-life Disneyland. But other than that, there is no reason to ever watch this movie. It isn't quite a worthless, soul-sucking experience, but it hurt me to watch for what it could have been, and for being a fucking tedious snooze fest. 2.5 out of 10, fuck all the way off! So if you guys watched my last video, you should know that Touchstone Pictures is actually a Disney studio, and I am so sorry. And I don't mean that this is a studio that evil corporate Disney bought to complete their buyout of the entertainment industry. I mean that it was a studio created and funded by Disney. They just didn't openly advertise these films as such so they could reach a more mature audience. So even though it doesn't say Disney in the opening logos, Mission to Mars is a Disney film. It is also the only movie on this list that's based on an attraction I've never experienced. Which is a little sad, because this was originally an opening day attraction at Disneyland in 1955, though at the time it was Flight to the Moon, and was changed to Mission to Mars in the 70s. The ride unfortunately closed in 1992, and was replaced by the Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter, which was super talked about in the media due to its intensity and unsuitability for children. And I'm also willing to bet the original attraction was failing to draw in enough crowds to warrant it being kept over any other Tomorrowland attraction. So I just think it's kind of weird they made a movie based on this ride when it closed almost a decade earlier and was most definitely overshadowed in conversation by what replaced it. No wonder it bombed. And I'm just stalling for time at this point because this movie is really boring. When I first finished it, I thought it was just bad but not frustrating, but strangely, the more and more I wrote this segment of the script, I got more and more pissed off, to the point where I knocked it down a full number rating. The opening 15 minutes or so on Earth are just the most generic characters saying the most generic things. Oh boy, I sure can't wait to go to Mars. I'll sure miss my family though. Come on guys, we've been through so many gosh darn adventures, nothing will stop us now. Man, I'm an astronaut dude that loves his astronaut dudette wife. I love her so much and I can't wait for this mission. Am I gonna die? Is it extremely obvious that I'm going to die? This is the most frustrating case of just waiting for something to go wrong I've seen in a movie in a long time. Because it's just so obvious that the second team going to Mars is going to have to act as a rescue party for the initial team. It just gets drilled into your brain and I'm pissed off before we even get to Mars. And once we do get to Mars, I can't even pretend to be sad that these characters we barely know outside of they are friends and they love their family are brutally killed in the first few minutes we see. And I really need to highlight brutally here because holy shit, this is the most violent imagery I have ever seen in a PG movie. It's not quite on the level of like, I don't know, Invincible or The Boys, but this genuinely caught me off guard and made me uncomfortable. Again, because it's a PG movie. I went in with the mindset and expectation of seeing some light, fun, whimsical action, not a fucking human smoothie. I actually like the idea of showing kids some surprisingly brutal stuff in their media, but this is next level. This would have freaked the hell out of me as a kid. But whatever, I can't even be sad that these guys died because they are idiots. If you see a giant, evil, sentient sandstorm barreling towards you, don't stare at it and wonder, fucking run! Like, God!
Do you wanna die?
Okay, that's just the first half hour or so. Is the rest of the movie bad? Yes! This script should just be called Exposition to Mars, because these characters talk like robots and it's distracting. After the first segment on Mars and the bomb drop of the giant statue face, the movie takes so painfully long to get the rest of our characters to Mars that I actually forgot about the giant statue face. But Hudson, how can you forget about the crazy twist reveal? Because this middle chunk of the movie was so fucking boring after the fact! I couldn't will myself to be interested in this twist because, quite frankly, the movie isn't either. It's more focused on the second team of astronauts getting to Mars instead. So riddle me this, filmmakers. Why should I be interested in this segment of the film when it showed us something that is inherently much more interesting? In concept. This segment of the movie has the most boring characters and takes up so much time that by the time we finally get back to Mars so we can finally expand upon this twist, there's really not much time in the movie left to make it interesting. Also, why is the movie so adamant that the twist that aliens exist needs to be built up for most of the runtime? It's aliens, dude. It's really not that unique. As soon as the Martian plot gets fully revealed, it's explained super quickly and the movie just rushes to its ending. A very abrupt ending, by the way. Guys, can you believe it? The depressed astronaut who lost his wife and isn't satisfied with life goes out to live with the aliens? That's so bittersweet and unexpected. Oh my gosh, I love this movie! Literally the only character I liked was the Don Cheadle guy. I thought he was by far the standout performance that got me slightly emotionally invested. I only wish the movie focused on him a bit more because he survives the storm at the beginning, is absent for the rest of the movie until our other astronauts finally land on Mars and we see he's gone insane. But then after like 2 minutes, he's sane again. I wish there was more of him going insane, and I wish it took longer for him to actually regain his sanity. But whatever, he's the only guy I liked. And the effects were pretty cool. Dated, but still well put together and kind of engaging. Plus, I liked some of the directing here. There was a sequence in the middle where one of the guys is stuck out in space and there's not enough fuel to retrieve him without them getting stuck out with him. That was actually pretty tense and gave me the classic Brian De Palma anxiety. But that's it. One good character, some cool effects, and a single tense scene. That's all this movie has. Don't ever watch it, it's boring, it's lazy, it's pretty dumb. 3 out of 10. I love Pirates of the Caribbean. For the most part. Yeah, the series is like Indiana Jones and Star Wars for me. When I like it, I love it. But more often than not, it doesn't love me back. And here we have the infamous Dead Men Tell No Tales. The 5th Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Let me say that again. Pirates of the Caribbean 5. It's just, the idea of that sounds so drawn out, and I don't even know where to start. I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid when it first came out, and boy, I was not excited to revisit it. So I guess let's start with the elephant in the room, Captain Jack Sparrow. Arguably the single greatest thing to come out of this series is rendered pathetic and pointless here, because these two are straight up not the same character. Jack Sparrow was many things in the first 4 films. You cannot tell me he was dumb or a coward. Yes, he was desperately running from the Kraken in the second movie, but he still fought against Davy Jones' crew and faced the Kraken at the end. He overcame his fear, and still before that felt like a brave action hero throughout these movies. This Jack is just a blithering, drunk coward who constantly runs from danger, makes constant quips, and never seems to be in control of any moment. One of Jack's most compelling attributes in the previous films is that you knew damn well he was in control of almost every situation, and even when he wasn't, he was hard-pressed to drop his demeanor or facade. My point is that Jack still felt like a capable action protagonist in these films. But here, he stumbles around half the movie, running from almost every fight, and never does anything smart or cunning. It's clear that these filmmakers knew vaguely about Jack as a character, watched a video called, quote, Jack Sparrow, funny moments, end quote, and thought that was enough research. And I know damn well that's true given how much continuity they break in this movie. There's no way they did any more research than the 10 minutes they spent browsing the Jack Sparrow fan wiki. And it's clear they didn't do any more research than this because there is so much broken continuity here, like it's kind of funny. First off, the timeline. You cannot tell me that this Jack and this Barbossa are 20 fucking years older than this Jack and this Barbossa. They only look about 10 years older because the actors literally were, but they had to have a big time skip in order to introduce Will and Elizabeth's son all grown up. And let me tell you, he sure is an interesting character. He loves his dad and loves myths and, he loves Kaya Scodelario? But I mean, who doesn't? He's fucking boring. I don't get why the filmmakers were so desperate to include him when Elizabeth would have been a much more compelling option for saving Will from his curse. I think maybe it's because Keira Knightley didn't want to return, but honestly at that point, have no one in the family return. Just let these characters rest. And if we're talking about Will and his curse, let's again address the broken continuity. If you watch the previous movies, which the filmmakers clearly did not, the crew of the Flying Dutchman will become cursed and deformed by the sea if they abandon their duty of ferrying those who died at sea to the land of the dead. But Will looks deformed and becoming a fish here. Why exactly? And I don't want to hear people saying, well, he probably has barnacles because he's been underwater for so long, not because he abandoned his duty. Respectfully, can it? If Will abandoned his task, then the film should tell us that. Or if he didn't abandon his task, then don't show him becoming fishy, because all this accomplishes is confusing the audience and creates more questions than answers. But fine. I can accept that this aspect of the plot is up to interpretation. What I can't accept is that they completely changed or forgot how Jack got his iconic compass.
The compass you barter from me, it cannot lead you to this?
This compass points towards what you want most. Never betray it.
So yeah, these filmmakers clearly didn't care about respecting the original films, because this movie bastardizes the character of Jack Sparrow, breaks continuity, and introduces new characters when they really don't add much and would have been better suited to be old characters we already recognized. And don't worry, this isn't the only thing that's bad about this movie. I cannot stand Karina. Oh my god, she is the antithesis of what this series represents in terms of strong female characters. Spoiler alert for the rest of the video, but I love Elizabeth Swann. She is by far my prime example of a perfectly written, strong female character, and is genuinely one of my favorite characters in anything ever. What I love about her is that she's brave, she's smart, she's independent, and she doesn't necessarily need to flaunt it. The filmmakers normally don't make the men around her dumb to make her seem smarter, for the most part, because that feels kind of demeaning towards the female audience members. Instead, she just genuinely is a cunning and courageous heroine, one that I think other blockbusters should study. Looking at you, Star Wars. Meanwhile, Karina is everything Elizabeth is not. She's really smart, but they need to show this by having everyone call her a witch constantly. And if they're not calling her a witch, all the men around her act like idiots when she says very basic things. I hate the scene when she's on the dying gull with Jack's crew and says some pretty basic mapping phrases and everyone looks at her like they have no idea what she's saying. These men who have spent their entire lives on the sea, dedicating their entire life to sailing, and you're fucking telling me that they haven't even heard of mapping with the stars? There's just no fucking way. I know I'm rambling here, but it's true. Why do they not understand the concept of mapping with the stars? That's like a really old wayfinding technique. But of course, she needs to be a smug and smarmy asshole about being smart, and the rest of the crew needs to be a bunch of bubbling buffoons who have no idea what she's talking about. And she spends so much of the movie saying, guys, there's no such thing as the supernatural. There are no ghosts, zombies, or ghouls. And upon realizing that she's wrong, she doesn't even have it in her to offer a real apology to Henry for doubting and ignoring him for so long. She actually asked him for an apology. I just don't get what they're going for with this character. She's just so unlikable and so annoying. I don't understand why they want us to like her when she spends so much of the movie complaining, acting smug, or invalidating other characters' thoughts. Not only this, but the really tight scripts from the original movie is just gone. There are several segments here that utterly waste time and only serve comic relief, rather than integrating said comic relief into the story like the original films. Mostly. Even as a kid, I can tell this movie is wasting a lot of time. But I distinctly remember thinking to myself, it's okay, this is salvageable, so long as they stick the ending. That was until the wedding scene. This pointless, gross, cringy, and painfully unfunny cutaway gag was when I realized this movie was beyond saving. This is when I gave up, and just decided to coast throughout the rest of the movie. The only slightly redeeming qualities of this movie are the scope and the villain. This movie feels like a nice return form to the high stakes and terrifying endeavors of the original trilogy, and has a lot of excitement and the vibes of an age of piracy coming to an end. I also really like Salazar as a villain, though he didn't do much, but he was still legitimately intimidating and was portrayed wonderfully by the great Javier Bardem. But despite his clear motivations, impeccable design and CGI, he kinda fell flat for me because he barely does anything, and I don't buy his forced connection to Jack Sparrow.
Captain Jack Sparrow.
I could go on, truly. There is so much more that's wrong with this movie, but I think you all know that already, so I'm just gonna leave it there. Maybe I'll get around to making a full-length rant review of this movie in the far future, but for now, I'm gonna go back to pretending this movie doesn't exist. 3.5 out of 10. You know, I hadn't heard much about this movie other than it was bad, so I tried to go in with an open mind and be nice to it. But even with that mindset, I was still disappointed with The Country Bears. And here's the thing, it's not that far off from what I was expecting from this movie tonally. I went in expecting a cheesy, family-friendly adventure with dumb jokes and a stringy plot, but that's not why I was disappointed. This movie's about a kid who's a bear, who loves this retired band called the Country Bears, who are also bears. He doesn't fit in at home, so he runs away to help the band get back together to put on one last performance to save the theater from getting closed down by the evil bank guy. I know, revolutionary plot. My gripe is that so much time is devoted to the silly adventure of this kid actually getting the band back together that barely any time is spent on this band, fully formed again and discussing the implications of that, and also their big performance at the end is really short and underwhelming. Instead of focusing more on these bears learning to play together again and be a fully completed band for the first time in a decade, we need to have wacky hijinks and little misadventures, including a big chase scene and an action climax with the villain. Like, you guys do realize this is a movie about a band that plays music, right? Was an action-adventure climax really necessary? But oh no, we need to have several action sequences and excitement for a movie about music and bands, because otherwise kids in the audience will get bored? Even though in my opinion, several big, loud, and energetic musical numbers fill the energetic niche of an action scene. Whatever, the rest of the movie is boring and poorly paced, some of the songs were nice, the bears were surprisingly fun and expressive in their movements while they perform. Hell, they were surprisingly expressive in general, except for the eyes. The creepy eyes just put me off and sort of soured the entire viewing experience for me. These are impressive prosthetics, and I'm sure that if this movie came out just a few years later, these bears would have looked nearly perfect. Hell, they already do, but these soulless eyes are a bit uncanny. Christopher Walken as the evil bank guy was kinda entertaining, I guess, but again, I find it really contrived that the movie needs to climax with him kidnapping the bears so they can't perform in the final concert. And again, I really wish the final performance got more focus and build-up, but we already feel relieved and done with this movie after the action climax. Most of the characters were boring, but the bears were occasionally fun, that's kinda it. The jokes are forced and rarely funny, the pacing is really off, several of the scenes just go on far too long, especially the car wash sequence. That would have been almost funny if it were a minute and a half shorter. But so much of the movie's runtime is dedicated to bits that just drag on way longer than any bit should. Whatever, it's generic, it's boring, but the songs and occasional funny joke kinda take it up a notch. 3.5 out of 10. It's not awful, but don't watch it sober. I'd heard some pretty bad things about the Haunted Mansion 2003, but when that opening scene had music and narration from the ride, the legitimately creepy and saucy atmosphere, awesome camera work, some abstract imagery, and ending with a man hanging himself just like in the ride, let me say, I was hyped. I was excited, I was ready, I was all in, ready to get creeped out, have some laughs, and just get fully immersed in this world, just like the ride. This opening does the masterpiece that is the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland justice. Then, a minute later, it jumps to the present day and it's immediately revealed to us that the mansion is haunted, which really didn't need to be built up as a twist or a surprise, but it's kind of annoying how there was no build up at all, frankly. And then it cuts to Eddie Murphy playing himself. Now don't get me wrong, I love Eddie Murphy. I think Coming to America is one of the greatest comedies of all time, fight me!
And I want to tear you apart, and your friend too.
But you can't deny that he's a very silly comedian. He has a goofy, lighthearted style, and I bet all the money in my brother's wallet that the filmmakers thought it would be really funny to have a creepy movie with a creepy atmosphere balanced out by this funny man. But it doesn't work. It gets really annoying really fast. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm not gonna knock a movie points for changing aspects of the ride while adapting it into a film, but let me explain why the Haunted Mansion ride works so well. Firstly, the atmosphere. The ride isn't necessarily scary, but it's got a really deep and detailed vibe that draws you in. You're not really getting scared by what's occurring around you, but you're so invested in the scene that you almost kind of forget you're on a theme park ride, and you can't help but feel unsettled. There is so much detail, nuance, and subtle storytelling in this theme park ride of all things that it should be studied. In the second half of the ride, once the ghosts physically appear, the atmosphere is as strong as ever, but now there's an abundance of goofy visual gags meant to show the sillier sides of the concept of ghosts. But this isn't a bad thing, it's still atmospheric, vibey, and saucy, and the important part is that these gags don't overcome said vibe or tone. The ride is still immersing you and taking itself very seriously, and I love it for that. The problem is, when adapting this concept to a movie, you need to be careful with the comedic aspects, because if you hire a fast-talking goofball who doesn't take anything seriously, I can't keep myself invested in the atmosphere or world. I swear, this movie was trying so hard to be funny that it just comes back on itself. Maybe I want to be invested in this imagery and setting, because the mansion looks cool. The effects and costumes and the ghosts, they all look cool. But since Eddie Murphy and his family are quipping every 10 seconds, I can't keep myself interested. I just found myself rolling my eyes the entire time. I am not exaggerating when I say the fucking trailer for the 2023 Haunted Mansion, a movie I have not seen as of writing this segment of the script, and a trailer I have not seen in 2 years does a better job balancing these concepts and comedy with a spooky atmosphere. The fucking trailer made me think, huh, this movie gets it. More than the movie I just watched all the way through. Whatever, what's the movie about? Eddie Murphy plays your standard dad who's so busy with work he forgets about his family character, and I bet you $1 million that you already know the character traits of the rest of his family. He has the sassy daughter, the naive son, and the concerned wife who's all like, "No, husband, you need to work less and spend more time with your family." The only thing about them that caught my attention is the fact that the kid who plays his son is the same kid in Stuart Little 2 and Spider-Man 2. That's it, I just thought it was cool. Then they go to the mansion on their way to their family vacation because the dad wants to sell the house because he's a real estate agent. But oh no, the house is actually haunted and they need to escape. Yeah, real fucking original movie. I would have just loved an origin story of the mansion, like what happened there, why it's haunted, who the ghosts are. That sounds so much cooler than your standard characters must escape a haunted house story. And man, I can just feel the idea of that movie poking its head in the door here, because again, some of the imagery, sets, costumes, everything about the ghost and mansion itself, it's all really cool. This movie was passionate and creative when it came to everything but the script. I really don't have much more to say. It's boring, it's annoying, but it's really nice to look at sometimes, plus sometimes I found the jokes funny. The standout for me was Terrence Stamp as the ghost butler, rest in peace. He put on a very subdued yet cartoonish performance that fits the vibe of the ride perfectly. And again, I'm not saying this movie is bad because it's not faithful to the ride. Hell, all the top movies on this list are far from faithful. I'm saying it's bad because it took the concept of the ride and did something really standard and boring with it. 3.5 out of 10. Could have been worse. I can see kids and families liking it, but for me, I'll stick with another 2003 Disney ride movie. Oh, how the mighty fall. Coming off the previous movie, this is a slap to the face. Let me put it like this. The people who hate Pirates of the Caribbean think that this is what Pirates of the Caribbean is as a whole. But no, it's not. This boring-ass sin, goofy-ass side quest doesn't even come close to the highs of the original trilogy. I know some fans of the series like this one, and I can see why. It's a lighter, more digestible, and decently fun little adventure compared to the complex and nuanced first three. So if you claim to like this one and say it's on par with the trilogy, I won't argue, I get it. But for me personally, this one just isn't it, Chief. Let me say this, I thought the ending of the third film was nearly perfect. And I'm not against the idea of making sequels to movies that have a near-perfect ending. I'm one of the few people who defends Toy Story 4 and the modern Fast and Furious movies. But it has to be done right and made in a way that respects the tone and vibe of its predecessors. This movie is not that. This movie is overindulgent on the goofy nonsense that the first three use sparingly. This movie opens with Jack disguised as a well-known judge. Nobody calls it out except for Gibbs, not even the other court workers standing right in front of him. And people rag on Jack's escape from the king in this movie as being too outlandish and goofy, which, like, yeah, it is. There's no way Jack would be able to get past all these guards like this. It makes these soldiers look like complete morons. But that isn't even close to the absurdity of the palm tree escape. That's the moment when I realized this movie was too far gone. None of the new characters are interesting or compelling. I fucking hate the Finnick Odair clergy guy. Literally, his only personality is, guys, you need to stop being pirates or you go to hell, and making goo-goo eyes at the mermaid who doesn't have much personality either. Watching these two made me realize the movie was trying to appeal to the women in the audience who love Twilight and other crappy romance movies where the guy is shirtless and the girl has no personality so she can be a self-insert. Because these two have no chemistry or personality aside from being attractive and in love. I'm sorry, but I hate Twilight and movies of that sort for the sole purpose that they're both toxic and harmful portrayals of romance that probably set women in Hollywood back a decade and should not be seen as feminist films. And neither should this, because this mermaid lady, in comparison to the series' previous main love interest, is the most bland and pointless character ever. I know they needed her tear, but oh my god, I was bored to tears watching her. Sorry, that was a bad pun. I hate these two with a burning passion, almost as much as I hate other toxic romance movies. I prefer having strong, well-written women in my movies, but that's just me, I guess. Blackbeard, as cool of a concept as it is to have him in this movie, is by far the worst villain in the series. Ian McShane is normally amazing, but I feel like he's half asleep in this movie, and it's not hard to see why because he isn't nearly as compelling or interesting as the previous villains. Hell, even as the villain who came after him in the next movie. I mean, I like his design, I like his ship, I really love his theme, but that's it. Not a bad villain, but an utterly forgettable one, which in a series filled with the most memorable villains in film history is kind of a curse. And that's not all, the story feels aimless and unengaging. After the so-so opening and admittedly really cool hanging and mermaid scenes, it's just our characters wandering around the island not doing anything particularly important or memorable. I swear, if Jack wasn't just as fun and witty as he was in the previous 3 movies, this would be a lot lower on the list. But I also must add that I don't think Jack is a character who can carry a movie like this, because even though he's still very entertaining, I still kind of get the sense that he's just the comic relief character. Without Will and Elizabeth to bounce off of, I just find him a bit too overbearing here. The ending was fine, I kind of liked Barbossa's revenge quest, plus I thought Penelope Cruz was really cool in this movie, even though she wasn't given too much to do. She's just kind of a female Jack Sparrow who's willing to lie and manipulate to get her way. My point is, this movie blows, stop watching after the 3rd one, you're not missing much. Some cool action and pretty good performances aren't enough to save this movie. 4 out of 10, Johnny Depp carries. I'm willing to bet that most of you had never heard of the Tower of Terror movie. Truth be told, neither had I until I was researching for this video. This was the first of these attraction-based films, and is the only made-for-TV movie on the list. So I'm gonna go kinda easy on this movie because it obviously wasn't made to be compared to the big-budget Hollywood productions. Also, because there's no legal way to watch this movie, I won't be showing any clips to avoid copyright claims. In short, this feels less like a movie and more like an extended episode of Goosebumps. I'm not exaggerating, it's got the vibe, the camera work, the costume style, and just overall feel of a long episode of Goosebumps. This isn't a bad thing necessarily, but because of the kinda cheap, cheesy feel, I kinda got bored of this one after a while because I felt like it could be condensed to a much shorter movie. The characters are pretty boring. You got your standard 90s teen girl and your standard down-on-his-luck guy who doesn't believe in no ghosts. And of course you got the ghosts themselves, who aren't super interesting either. I applaud the fact that some of the ghosts played a very large role in the film, and one of them wasn't even revealed to be a ghost until about halfway through, but it kinda felt more forced than surprising, because there were absolutely no special effects, lighting, makeup, or even costume changes to represent the fact that these guys were ghosts. It was kind of funny because these guys just feel like regular living characters. And again, I'm not against that on concept, I just wish a bit more effort was put into making these guys seem kind of otherworldly. Like, I wish there was some sort of special effects, makeup, lighting, or costume changes to make them seem like, you know, ghosts. For example, look at the Grail Knight at the end of Indiana Jones 3. Even though he's alive, there's this harsh white light on him that makes him seem more like a ghost. I just thought that was a neat way to show the fact that he's different. I just wish something along those lines was used for the ghosts in this movie. But this is all a nitpick because besides that, I really don't have that much to say. It's cheap, it's cheesy, I don't really care about any of the characters, and the jokes weren't always very funny. But I did really vibe with the atmosphere and vibe in this one, mostly because it was never played to be taken too seriously. In the Haunted Mansion, they wanted us to take that shit seriously, but I couldn't because of the overly comedic tone. But here, the tone and vibe is a bit more laid back, so the spooky stuff doesn't clash with the funny stuff nearly as much as Haunted Mansion, so I could actually get pretty invested in the atmosphere and world here. But I really don't have much else to say. It's not great, but it's a passable time that I could see kids liking around spooky season. So I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10, but again, it's really not that bad. Nothing here was particularly offensive, but nothing was outright good either, but honestly, not a bad time. Okay, this movie is kind of a weird one for me because I feel like it should be a little better and a lot worse than it actually is. This time, I'll start off with the positives. Haunted Mansion 2023 feels much more like it was made for fans of the ride, by fans of the ride. This feels like it was specifically crafted for the emo 20-something Disney adults who spend half their time in Disneyland explaining the lore of the ride they learned from offhand Disney, and going through the new Haunted Mansion merch store that opened last year. and I love it for that. To prove my point, in the last 8 years or so, the Hatbox Ghost from the ride became kind of a fan favorite. There was no way that the Hatbox Ghost of all characters would have been the main villain or even mentioned by name if it weren't for Offhand Disney and the other Disney Parks YouTubers bringing to light just how cool this ride is and standing the Hatbox Ghost. And despite the movie's flaws, this is a love letter to one of the greatest theme park rides on the planet. The music, the atmosphere, the ghosts themselves, this feels so much more like the Haunted Mansion that we know and love. And again, I'm not saying this makes the movie better because it's using elements from the ride. I'm trying to make the point that these elements from the ride translate very well into a film adaptation. I love the atmosphere here. The vibes, the designs of the mansion and the ghosts, the music and the references, oh, it's so cool. You can tell the filmmakers looked at the 2003 movie and said, okay, but for reals this time. But I feel like they didn't try quite hard enough. Yeah, I know I just praised the hell out of this movie and its atmosphere, but notice that I didn't praise one very important thing. The script. The script is not too great, guys. Where the 2003 Haunted Mansion suffered was having constant jokes and our characters taking nothing seriously, so you literally couldn't get immersed in the story and setting. Where this film suffers isn't that it has constant jokes. Throughout the film, I found myself getting into it and the spooky vibes, but then it all came crashing down when they would interrupt these sequences with jokes. And not just any jokes, this film suffers hard from the dreaded MCU style, well this is awkward, well that just happened, he's right behind me isn't he guys, jokes. This movie thinks interrupting genuinely creepy or emotional moments is a substitute for funny writing, but guess what? It's not. Maybe I want to be creeped out or emotionally invested in the story. Maybe I want to feel things other than ha ha what quirky characters. But whatever, besides that, this movie still isn't amazing, but I kinda had a pretty good time with it. I actually liked these characters. Most of them weren't that deep or anything, but I liked these actors. At first, I wasn't all that into the main guy, Ben. I mean, I liked how they portrayed him as a depressed asshole and didn't explicitly say why he was for a while. But at the same time, at the beginning, I feel like he was a bit too much of an asshole and kind of a dummy for some of the actions he takes in the mansion. Like, my dude, the people who have been living in this mansion for several days now just said that it's unsafe to leave that room after midnight, so listen to them! But that's fine, because I loved Lakeith Stanfield's performance here. I was actually brought to tears when he was telling the story of his wife. But by far the standout here was Owen Wilson. God, the idea of taking Owen Wilson of all actors and putting him in the role of a priest was comedic genius. Yeah, he's just playing himself, but again, Owen Wilson playing an Owen Wilson as priest is a very funny idea, and I loved every scene with him. And Danny DeVito was pretty fun too. He's always fun, so there's that. Surprisingly, the entire main cast has really good chemistry. I actually bought them coming together and becoming a pseudo-family. It was kind of touching and felt natural. Plus, like I said earlier, the atmosphere and imagery are really cool here. My favorite scene by far was Ben leaving his body and being tormented by the Hatbox Ghost while all the other ghosts are physically revealed. It was really well shot and well directed, and even succeeded in creeping me out. Hell, most of the movie is very well shot and directed. I like the visual flair here. So yeah, not a perfect movie, and not quite what I wanted out of a darker Haunted Mansion movie, but at the same time, not a bad time overall. I might even rewatch it someday in the future. You guys should put this one on during spooky season, you might like it too. 6 out of 10, not bad. I am pleasantly shocked to announce that I actually liked Jungle Cruise. I didn't have any interest in watching it upon release because I kinda had The Rock and a Jungle fatigue, plus I heard it was not very good, so yeah. But I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. It's just a decently fun little romp through the jungle with decent characters. Though, I'm not sure if I would feel the same way if the last 3 movies I'd seen in a row weren't Pirates 4, Tomorrowland, and Pirates 5. I don't know, maybe I was just desperate for any movie that was slightly above average. But regardless, this was good. I really liked the opening, and I really loved Emily Blunt's first escape scene. All the action scenes are really well directed and has a lot of excitement and energy. There are a lot of overly goofy moments and Looney Tunes ass physics, but I don't mind it as much here because it doesn't really clash too hard with the darker moments, unlike Pirates 5, which was coupled with really disturbing imagery and cartoony ass moments. And that's another thing while we're on the topic of Pirates, this movie desperately wants to be what Pirates was 20 years ago. Especially in the last half with the immortal cursed CGI conquistadors and the quest to break their curse, it feels very reminiscent of Pirates 1, and these really aren't movies you want to compare because one of these is obviously superior. But it's not all bad because I thought the undead conquistadors were pretty cool villains with awesome and innovative designs. I also like the flashback scenes of their backstory. It got me engaged in this cool concept paired with great world building. And if we're talking about villains, I loved Jesse Plemons as this German prince. He was a delightfully petty gay asshole. When he was shooting at our protagonist with a giant machine gun, singing his own theme music, they got a genuine belly laugh out of me. though I do feel like you could tweak the script and remove the Germans entirely. But that's fine, Plemons was still hilarious here, and the way he was defeated caught me completely off guard and was hysterical. The Rock was The Rock, but I kinda like how they wrote around his "I can't lose a fight" clause in his contract, so there was at least some stakes regarding his character. Emily Blunt was a lot of fun as well. I really like how she's a dynamic character who's great at many things, but also has some pretty significant flaws and weaknesses. It made me much more invested in her character and story. The only character I wasn't into at first was her brother, and no, it's not because he's gay, it's that this guy was annoying on top of spoiled for like half the movie. I do like how he grows as a character and becomes braver as the film goes on, but he was such an obnoxious addition to the film for so long that it kinda tainted part of the viewing experience for me. And the story itself and the characters aren't bad, in fact some of it's pretty good, but I will say even the good stuff is entirely unoriginal. This is a pretty standard adventure movie with a MacGuffin, so I kinda felt like I knew where it was headed, but that didn't stop me from having a fun time. I turned off part of my brain and just enjoyed this cute little adventure that had some nice references to the ride. I may or may not even be intrigued by the upcoming sequel. So yeah, this is by far the biggest surprise on the list. Not amazing or anything, but this is a whole ass 7 out of 10. I liked it. Okay, so if you've been keeping track and using the process of elimination, you should know what 3 movies are left. And I had a long script for these 3 remaining films, but I decided that each of these movies will be getting their own videos in the future. Those won't be out for a while though, so for the time being, I'll go over each film individually briefly. In 3rd place, we have the epic Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest. So I'll be brief and blunt here, this movie rocks and you all know it. It can be a bit clunky with the pacing in the middle, and the Cannibal Island sequence is just 20 minutes of tensionless, pace-killing racist fluff. But other than that, god, this is just such a solid movie. Jack has an actual character arc here that's surprisingly compelling in my opinion. Plus, Will gets another great emotional stake in this film, this time being connected to his long-lost father. And his father, Bootstrap Bill, man, what a character. He's not all that deep, but god, I just love his tragic design and Stellan Skarsgård's epic performance. Elizabeth doesn't fare the best here in my opinion. She's still really cool and a lot of fun. I just feel like our other 2 leads were a bit better here. And the villains. I think Beckett is one of the underrated film villains. God, this guy is just so detestable in subtle ways. Despite not being very physically imposing, you get the sense that you should fear this man and what he and his influence can do. He poses the biggest threat to anything in the whole series in my opinion. This guy is the big bad of the franchise and I love it. But even though he's the biggest threat, you all know which villain steals the show here. Davy Jones is without a doubt one of the best antagonists in film history. Fight me. And he would be up there just based on his performance and visual presentation alone, but the writers just had to go and make him really compelling, threatening, tragic, and even kind of funny. Davy Jones is an example of a perfectly executed character in my opinion. I have no issues with him. And the action here is even more exciting than the first, which is saying a lot because the first had pretty great action, but Gore Verbinski takes his direction and the action to the next level in this movie. The characters are still fun, the story is still engaging, and it has one of the most exciting and crazy twist endings I've ever seen. You see, this is back before Star Wars drove the trend of bringing characters back from the dead into the fucking ground. I just love this ending and this movie so much. Yeah, the plot and pacing can be a bit clunky, I think mostly due to the Cannibal Island sequence, and some of the characters are a bit flat, but otherwise, this is still a killer movie that I revisit time and time again. 8 out of 10, bravo. I'll be completely transparent here. It was revisiting Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl that made me realize I want to dedicate a video to each movie of the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. Because man, this is just it. This may be one of the most consistent and near perfect films ever made. Yeah, I said it. It isn't perfect. No movie truly is. But I feel there are so few flaws at this one that it's kinda mind-boggling. It has some of the most iconic blockbuster characters in history, some of the best performances in blockbuster history, and without a doubt, a script so airtight that it should be studied. I am planning a lengthy video on this movie, so I won't say much else. But just know that Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, is one of my favorite pieces of media ever, and I cannot express how exceptional this film is in such a short span. This movie, once again, isn't perfect, but for me personally, it checks all the boxes. So I'm giving this movie the rare 10 out of 10. And I think you all know what number 1 is. This may be a controversial choice, but it's my list and I can do what I want. Pirates of the Caribbean At World's End is far from a perfect movie. It has some pretty notable flaws, but as it stands, I think this is a fantastic film that brings this trilogy to a thrilling and fittingly emotional conclusion. Though it isn't the best movie on this list from a critical standpoint, for what it represents, for its emotional core, to its perfect action sequences and music, I get the most enjoyment out of this one out of all the films on the list. Though critically, I'd probably put it at a 7 out of 10, in my heart of hearts, Pirates of the Caribbean Outworld's End is a 10 out of 10. Really, really. So yeah, that was the list. This was another fun video to make, but honestly, I want to wind down on making Disney videos from now on and expand my horizons. So from now on, with the exception of my upcoming 3 Pirates videos, I will move on from Disney and adventure to explore more animation and film. But thank you all for watching, comment down below why my opinion is wrong. Have a great day and stay safe.